we are in the World War One stage of drones, so things will change a lot.
There's some of that. I think a lot of the main issue though is like essentially, like with machine guns, how when they were first when they first came in, it was the Boer War, and all the Europeans looked at that and said, haha, those silly Africans, they don't know what the fuck they're doing, and then proceeded to get fucking mulched by them in World War One. Like it's not quite that level because a lot of people really learned that, hey, this shit's important, we should pay attention. But there is something to be said for the way they're being employed right now is technically peer-to-peer, but it's not the same way that, say, a US-China war would go.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, I mean, obviously I'm kind of nitpicking here, Redneck, but also I think Ukraine is a great time to be extremely wary of the concept of do not overlearn lessons from the last war. Like, there are lessons to be learned here about usage of drones and all that kind of stuff, but one is wise to be careful about overlearning how the last war went. And I think right now drones are kind of in the... drones get to live in the current space of hype, I guess. Of like, these are the new things that are going to change warfare or whatever. And I hesitate to jump entirely on that bandwagon.
There are very few weapons which have truly changed warfare. The only ones that I can think of off the top of my head, the aircraft bomb, the machine gun. Maybe the repeating rifle.
Yeah.
Can you think of any other weapons that have like truly changed war? Where it's like they
horse
got introduced
archers?
and then it changed forever.
The horse archers really didn't. They were specific to that.
I guess maybe the chariot.
Yeah, maybe the chariot.
Yeah, the chariot.
Or you could just say
That was
the
like
wheel.
the beginning of. I guess nukes. Nukes are kind of untested though.
Nukes
are
aren't
like mad. That's a strategic level consideration, I guess.
Yeah, I don't know. There's an interesting second amendment discussion I've had about nukes. But nukes.
Every American
haven't really
citizen has the
changed.
right to own a nuke. Yes.
Well, I think so, but I don't know. There's depending on how you want to read the Second Amendment. A fair reading, I think, would be that the American citizen should have access to everything that the army does,
The government,
right,
yeah.
or the military. But because nukes are employed diplomatically and pretty much in no other way, shape, or form,
Damn it.
you could argue that there's a limit there.
There's enemy
but-
jet, by the way.
That's a whole other discussion.
As for tanks, no, they didn't actually. Because there were tanks in World War One, and they got fucking obliterated.
Tanks changed to some extent some of their strategic overview of how wars are fought, but tactically, or I'm saying that in vert. Sorry, they changed the way tactically on the ground, the way people fight around them, but strategically on paper they are treated and they act very similar to Cav. They move fast, cover a lot of ground, and project power forward, but you have to support them.
Like, if you want to talk about like how things changed World War One, World War Two, that was combined arms warfare, aircraft.
Aircraft were big.
Like the entire idea of combined arms warfare is a lot of what worked. Because then you'd have shit like the Stukas and all that. You would have P-47s, combined arms, air support, ground support, that sort of thing. Everything working together, and that was a huge change. Arguably, I mean, you could certainly make an argument that tanks were a part of it. I think aircraft were a larger part of it because all of a sudden you had access to basically more precision artillery.
What about cannons?
I don't think so.
Really?
Yeah. They were noticeable, but like, because it's like you look at like Napoleonic artillery. It's like, yes, that did a lot, but wasn't the thing that made people stop standing in lines like basically repeating rifles and stuff like that? When I say repeating, I mean stuff like semi-auto, not like not semi-auto, bolt action, breech loading, breech loading small arms.
No, I think technically the reason we stopped standing in lines more was rifling.
Okay,
Like
but the
rifling
point
becoming
is,
common.
yeah, the point is though that the actual artillery didn't change much in the tactical calculus.
Well, you say that, but I'm thinking. I think you're thinking too late in artillery's development. I'm thinking like cannons a la 1300s.
What did that change though? Fort design,
Certainly
maybe?
sieges.
Yeah,
Yeah, fort design completely. Because old European-style castles, incidentally, had to be thrown out because their walls couldn't withstand any kind of attacks from cannons.
Right, but the thing is, though, it's like, yes, it caused a revolution in the response, but what were the material changes in tactics? And I'm asking this because I legitimately don't know.
I'm trying to think. It's kind of weird because cannons were originally only used for sieges until they miniaturized like late 1500s or early 1600s, I want to say. I mean, EU4 ironically does a decent job of depicting that and how they balance out the game, but yeah. That's actually one of the big issues the Ottomans had, ironically, is that one of the reasons they fell off is that they didn't keep up with the rest of Europe in miniaturizing cannons, which made miniaturized cannons became actually useful in a tactical sense, like in battle.
Not to interrupt, but that, by the way, was a textbook case on how to not fly a jet versus a prop, in case anyone was paying attention. Continue.
Fair enough.
You're not supposed to turn?
No, you're supposed to turn with a
I
prop.
thought turning was the thing to do.
No, wow, that was bad.
Back to the autism, though. But it's like the point is, though, that yes, it forced a response, but it didn't really force a change. Whereas it's like with aircraft, like you had World War I to World War II, and I'd argue the biggest difference between the two of them is the combined arms warfare that was enabled via the use and integration of aircraft onto the battlefield in a tactical role.
Yeah.
And that was a complete revolution, in my opinion, as opposed to a like sort of problem solution type of thing, which you see a lot of now, where it's like, for example, ATGMs, man portable ATGMs, are a problem for tanks that are forcing a counter answer.
Yeah, I mean, I guess it wouldn't be a weapon in itself, but I guess you would say gunpowder.
Yeah. You could certainly argue gunpowder. It would take a long time for it to be useful, though, but I could certainly see that.
Yeah.
So, and Redneck, you were right about rifling. That's what Zombie said. I'm just going through the chat right now because I'm a little bit delayed. The thing about rockets is, unlike with Total War, they kind of weren't really used for like a battlefield thing. They were just sort of used for celebrations and shit. So, I wouldn't really say that they did a lot with warfare because they weren't really used for it.
Yeah, I think the issue with rockets is that they were too inaccurate, I think, to be useful in a combat sense for hundreds of years.
Yeah, for a very, very long time.
Yeah.
The thing though is, like, heavy tanks were an evolutionary dead end. Yes, you can argue that modern MBTs are kind of like heavy tanks. I disagree. Doctrinally, I'd say they're closer to mediums, but
They are physically quite heavy, but no, I would agree that we seem to have determined or come to the consensus that a tank needs to be... There's a balance to be struck between armor and mobility, and heavy tanks are too far to one side.
Looking at it, rocket carts, 15th century. Essentially, it's the same issue that we were having before about siege weaponry. Here's the thing: I disagree with chemical warfare being a paradigm shift type thing. Reason being that the chemical warfare is essentially, let's make our artillery and our bombs more powerful or more effective by increasing the area that they affect when the shells or armaments hit the ground.
Yeah, chemical warfare, as far as like mustard gas artillery shells, is like just the next evolution in shrapnel shot.
Essentially it's like cluster munition.
Yeah.
Where it's like, yes, it was horrific, yes, it was very effective. I don't think it was a revolution. The reason why I say like machine guns were such a thing is because like that's what forced the trench warfare of World War I was machine guns. Introduction of cab was because that was like chariots and shit like we were talking about earlier. Yeah.
Yeah.